Each piece is a unique handmade product. I look at a certain aspect of it and I can definitely say this is coming out of my machine.
Some people are romantic about having a bookcase with a lot of books, but I like everything digital for sure. It's just there. I can just think of the song and it'll just play. When you want to drink water, you open a faucet, but you don't want the faucet, you want the water. The faucet is kind of a problem. Like who wants a faucet?
Oddly, it really is a media philosophy problem. How does the means by which our messages are conveyed alter our take on the reality of the world? And they do. They very much do.
This production of that special product is only possible here in this building, in this town, and I could never move my whole company to any other place.
I use some really terrible PCs. I use some really terrible Apple hardware. This stuff is a lot better. Works a lot better, no question.
I'm used to it. I don't know if it's really magic anymore.
The combination of all these different tools in one is super convenient. It's super nice to have it.
I just use it to, get started, get my brain started. It's always, I think that's the reason I do it.
In my memory, it had become this really big, monstrous thing. I saw it and I thought, huh? Is this the thing? It's quite a small object actually when it's switched off.
They enable you to do the things that you used to dream about and think about. It's an interactive thing. You have to have a base, you have to have a foundation, and suddenly it enables you to do so many other things. There are other types of people who I don't think they have that foundation, who just look and go, I just don't get that. I don't understand why that has any intellectual or any entertainment or any spiritual benefit in doing that.
Technology is getting more personal and more real, tangible. But on the other hand, there won't be any definition about what is what anymore, and there's not really a strict border anymore.
Maybe it is necessary to leave the reality that we know in order to experience these different variations of space and time.
I don't know that I entirely remember the difference anymore. I remember the first experience of meeting someone in the physical world. And it was great because I just happened to recognize someone I knew from his jacket. So I looked at him and said, wait, you're Necromancer. And he looked back at me and said, wait, you're Peter Kern.
I think in a way that's also expected in some ways, like that you know who they are, if they're important. So it's like this kind of balance of between stalking and knowing, I guess.
My authorial name is Bruce Sterling, but that's not my legal given name that I climb onto aircraft with. We authors traditionally had a whole set of things like that. Nowadays they'd be an alternate identity or some kind of hacker name. I met Toxie. I was like, who's Toxie? Well, he's Karsten Schmidt. I didn't know he was Karsten Schmidt. It didn't really occur to me. I've never heard anybody say, hey, Karsten. And then there's a Flight 404, Robert Hodgin. Okay, he's a pretty famous guy in the tech art world, a real sort of code artist. All right, he's Flight 404 to me, okay? I mean, I'm not going to go around saying, oh, Mr. Hodgin, this, that, or the other.
Choosing which side of yourself you show doesn't feel to me like playing a role. Everybody edits themselves because you're thinking all the time, but you don't say everything you think. Language is editing, thoughts are edited, relationships are edited. You're always filtering part of you. I don't even think you could have a conversation if you're not editing your thoughts.
The means by which identity is constructed have changed. And you just have the kind of identity that, say, a French Oulipo literary dude would have had in 1957. You're just actually sophisticated in that way, and they were pioneer figures of a kind of globalized sensibility that's now just much more widely scattered.
I do wonder about the productivity of people's dreams for themselves. If you're constantly having to keep up on what it means to be you, where is you? Where are you? Where did it go?
People get kind of addicted to certain applications which they can't handle anymore without. And that makes everyday life a little more complicated. You are helpless without a small machine.
So myself, I'm pretty much on all the time. I go there and I can say I'm having a shitty time, or I'm having a great time, or I'm really drunk and guys, you've got to see this.
You're not clearly in anymore or out. You're just constantly in, and sometimes you get information when you don't want it. I get a lot of impulses and like, oh, this and that, and I should join this, and there's much more happening now. Things are more transparent.
It's good that there's technology now for that. On the other hand, it's the information overload that makes it sometimes harder to deal with it.
It's like there's something with me that I have to keep an eye on constantly. And I don't know why, because most of the time the things I read aren't even important.
Images and data and interesting things that attract your attention. People who create the data, they are aware of that, so they make it in a way that you are attracted to it.
People are like, oh, I think I'm addicted, but the reason you're doing it, yeah, it's just a lot of fun to have like junk food, information in little bits. It's not like a wholesome meal, but it's like you have a little candy everywhere.
To have this constant communication is terrific. I'm puzzled that some folks of my generation and older are as critical as they are of young people for taking advantage of this social aspect of this hive mind.
It's not really a problem for their generation. It's not any sign of mental illness. They're perfectly fine. All of them behave like that. I mean, not everyone, obviously, but above a certain income level and education level.
They were not really reacting to each other, so they would blurb something like and then 3 minutes later somebody else would react to that, but the other person is already doing something else. What's happening here? What does that mean? They're having like 5 conversations and maybe it's really interesting, but we don't get it.
I see it every day, and I try not to make value judgments about it. As soon as you start saying it's good or it's bad, you immediately close your eyes to half the evidence of what's going on the ground.
I know that this is useful to me. I'm going to set aside some time to do that, like breakfast or something, to experience that river of random information. And then I know there's going to be a time where I turn that off.
It is a challenge because it feels like that's the norm. The norm is to be connected all the time. And by saying I'm going to carve some space out, it makes me feel like a Luddite sometimes.
Distracted the whole time. That person that is there and something happening there, and
I live with that. I just live with the crisis. But I also try to be in the place I'm at. I don't try to let one mode of my life take over all modes of my life.
Actually, people are busier than they were before, and it makes life faster instead of it should slow life down.
I think it's maybe the speed of the information which is killing me sometimes. When you are in a certain moment and at the same time you're connected to another world, another person, or it slips away.
Weekends are important. Weekdays, it's trickier for more than about 6 hours at a time. I will occasionally do it anyway, but I know that something may have happened. I usually can tell when something is about to happen that requires my intervention, a disturbance in the force.
With our eyes, we're only tricking a kind of three-dimensional impression, and the only sense for human beings to receive three-dimensional impressions is our sense of touch.
Now we really have presence in digital space, I think, but we have it in a really strange and unexpected way.
Oh yeah. Well, what happens is my body disappears. I think from here down, it's not there. It's just my brain that works.
I can't move. I don't think I can move. I can't feel my legs. So I think I really panicked, and maybe that's also me exaggerating. But it felt really real at that time.
I guess it's not surprising that it's exhausting. I guess I'm most surprised when it's not exhausting.
Yeah, sometimes I really need help to re-enter my body again. The signals of hunger and thirst, exhaustment, they are... Well, I don't receive them anymore.
I notice what's around me, but I don't really care. I just want to finish it. For example, I can get really cold. The physical things for a period of time don't matter that much anymore.
I always think in the end it's not real as well. So it's like a kind of, it's also just a representation of the real.
Yeah, and you want to experience something with the person, not only sitting. If you would meet up with the person in real, you wouldn't sit in front of each other talking all the time. You would do something together and experience something in the world.
Augmentation of the kind we're describing is not really all about absolutely mimicking reality. If you absolutely mimic reality with stuff that's a fake, if you have like a perfectly good trompe-l'oeil, that's fraud. You know, and it gets you into spaces where you can get into a lot of trouble. Ontological crisis is what I'd call it, is people don't know what to believe or how to believe, you know, and little long-tailed chunks of reality making. Phantom worlds, you know, micro-ideologies.
Where do we become present back in our bodies and back with other physical people as well? That's something I don't think we've worked out.
Yeah, I like being in the moment, you know, enjoying a moment, how it is.
Go outside to a forest or to a swimming pool, something like that to contrast that, to switch it up a bit. The beach is the best. Like when you go in the water, that's really magical. So I think something happens and because it's so different from other things, you just refresh everything.
It's not about nature, it's more about reality. I'm not drawn to nature because all the digital and the distraction and all the stuff, it could be anywhere for me. It's something that has to change in my head and not really in my environment.
This idea of nature and technology kind of in union or in some hybridity really makes sense. It's still a relic maybe of the Industrial Revolution, that technology is fighting against nature, or nature against technology, and or that technology is controlling nature. I can't see a future back to basics. I can only see a future with technology, but I can also only see a future with nature. It has to come together at some point.
I mean, I don't want to live in the holodeck because I can't eat there and there's no toilets.
The philosophy in former days was to have a company independent from all other companies who were involved in the production. Much more extreme than Apple, who just returned to a part of that autarky. I was thinking about something that helps people in their development of personality, in their development of intelligent human beings.
I'm excited when I feel as though I can grow as a person with these technologies. They're not always designed to do that, though.
It's so connected to our body and our body changing, or our body being changed through technology, or even combined.
Without that being switched on, there's a lot of stuff I just can't do.
You just have like a physical feeling inside yourself that you just want to check just for a second.
If you think about humans and technology and the way in which they are already very connected, it's not so difficult to see lines and look into the future and see how we develop into a cyborg, which we actually already are, I think. It disturbs me in some way, and on the other hand, I find it really interesting.
There's a nice meme going around about the cloud as a lie. The cloud is a very boring business park outside Milton Keynes. In some ways, that would make me feel more comfortable. I can go there and see it. They'd much rather talk about this disembodied vision of heaven or clouds, and therefore it's there and it's safe. Nothing bad happens in the clouds. No one fights in the clouds, so it's all going to be okay.
It's impossible for us to imagine spans of times which are longer than our lifetimes. And what I think is that we have to develop a form of imagination for really long spans of time in order to understand reality a little more than we are able to right now.
I did an essay for this once. I was speculating about it for Long Now Foundation, how you could preserve things in the most intense possible way, and assuming infinite power and intelligence, and somehow if you could write information into the structure of space-time, just kind of make it part of the laws of nature so that this universe can't exist without this data embedded in it.
But let's say that they thought the Earth was flat and they found out it was round. What if we found out that time is not the way we think it is right now? And we find a way of traveling around back and forth instead of always going in one direction.
You can consciously try to control time too, and a lot of that comes back to the body. In the flow experience, we all know we have it when we lose track of time. 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, whoosh, I just didn't have any idea where I was. I was just so present. So maybe when you're very, very present, you don't really experience time the same way. Maybe we experience a lot of other things, and time is this strange way of quantifying it.
So, we're there, and I don't know what, I missed something. Something happened, and I missed it, and that feels really weird. I missed part of reality.
Maybe time doesn't have a real direction. Maybe time is a loop, and maybe time's most inner attribute is to be timeless.
a little low.